We think women need to talk more openly about money because money really matters. It shouldn't be embarrassing or confusing. Join the conversation. We'll be discussing a whole range of topics which will help you get comfortable with your finances. Money Matters. Brought to you by AJ Bell.
Hello and welcome to the AJ Bell Money Matters podcast. I'm Laura and I am joined by Danni. Hey Danni.
Hi Laura. Hi everyone. We have got a fantastic episode for you because our special guest this week is former investment banker, best-selling author, and now life and money coach, Linda Davies.
I feel like that introduction doesn't even really scratch the surface of the life that Linda's had. So she's also battled breast cancer, endured a terrifying kidnapping, being held in Iran for 2 weeks in the early 2000s. So resilience is definitely something I think she has in spades.
Yes, it was quite a conversation, and you're absolutely right. Her life, she has written about her life, and it would definitely make a Netflix series, I think. Money has coloured her entire career as well, as diverse as it has been. And what I was really struck by with her is that she has a real push to help people have a healthier relationship with money, because there really are so many ways that money can foster bad habits, from something that Linda calls blend spend. I can't even say it. Blend spend. I love that. It basically means kind of keeping up with the Joneses, spending to fit in with your circumstances, not thinking about the future, just blowing what you've got. But if you stopped and considered saving and investing, think of what you could achieve.
So definitely hang on for that interview, which is coming up and totally on our wavelength when it comes to trying to persuade women to talk about money, because not only talking about it, but understanding it. That's our one big thing that we're going to cover this week. So this is where we cover a particular topic, break it down in a jargon-free way, and explain what it means. And this week we're looking at a survey that was carried out by Capital One. And they asked 10 basic questions around finance. And I think, Danni, we can agree the results, while they weren't surprising, were slightly disappointing on people's knowledge level.
Yeah, they were disappointing. And what really got me was that young women aged 18 to 24 had the lowest levels of financial literacy of any age group. Now, if you want to take a look at all the numbers and the kind of questions that were asked, do look at the article, which is on our website, ajbellmoneymatters.co.uk. Hannah's written it. It's really interesting, but I don't think you'd be surprised to learn that the group with the most financial knowledge is men aged 55 to 64. Now, of course, time does play a huge part in that, because over the years you learn more, whatever your gender. But the younger you are, the longer that you have for investing magic to work. And we've spoken about compounding before. Really, basically, if you think about putting a grain of rice on a chessboard square, on the next square, you add 1 to it, so you've got 2. Then you add 2 to it, so you've got 4. And then you add 4 to that, and you've got 8. And by the end, your squares are overflowing with grains of rice. And of course, it means the more squares that you have to fill, the more years that you can leave your investments to grow, the better.
And it is not all bad news by any stretch of the imagination, because actually across all age groups, the gap between the financial literacy between men and women does narrow. So women still tend to have less knowledge than men, but that does narrow as the years go on. And the really cool bit is that over 2025 so far, AJ Bell has seen an almost 10% increase in the number of women opening accounts. And we really hope that that trend continues. And it is expected to continue as there's more help and support out there for first-time investors of all types, but particularly women. And obviously our Money Matters campaign is aiming to be part of that, because we have loads of articles and podcasts aimed at providing educational material, interesting articles, breaking down the jargon and the tricky technical topics to make you feel more empowered with your finances. And we do always keep jargon to a minimum. I am very hotly policing on that, aren't I, Danni? The jargon klaxon goes off if anyone uses it. But we know that for Gen Z in particular, Gen Z or Gen Z, Danni? This really highlights me as not Gen Z. Gen Z?
Well, if you're talking UK, it's Gen Z, isn't it? But if you're talking US, it's Gen Z.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll say both so that we can appeal to all of our listeners. But anyway, that generation in particular go to social media for their financial tips and tricks. And I think it's really great that there are so many resources out there now on social media and that there's so much more talked about when it comes to money and investing, particularly among female finfluencers, as they are called. But it's really tricky, I think, now to know what's a trustworthy resource, what's giving you good guidance and advice, and what is a bit fishy.
And I feel like I can use the jargon klaxon here on you, Laura. Finfluencer. We have used that term before, though, so maybe I should let you off. But financial influencer, someone on social media who's an influencer who focuses their content on finance. And we have had a few on this podcast. But I think it's really important that we point out that you do need to be cautious. You need to make sure that you're weeding out the bad apples, because there are plenty of financial influencers who give tips to large followers on social media, which are really helpful, educational, and responsible. But then there are others who might not be acting in your best interest. So if you think of those kind of posts that you may have seen, a lavish lifestyle, touting products or investments, not explaining the risks, not being qualified to give advice that they are giving, but full of fast cars, designer clothes, and incredible houses, kind of selling the dream, but not having anything to back that up. And those posts can be really quite dangerous.
Yeah, and the financial watchdog called the Financial Conduct Authority, sometimes shortened to the FCA, they've recently been involved in a big global crackdown on illegal financial advice on social media. So they're working with other countries on these questionable posts. They've made several arrests, requested that some posts have been removed, and issued warnings. I think it's really good that they're actually taking action. It's a tricky area to police because, as we know, social media content can spread very quickly. It's very quick and free to publish. So it's quite hard to crack down on these people. But the FCA has made it really clear that influencers need to act responsibly, only promote financial products when they're authorized to do so, or they will face prosecution. But of course, by the time things have got to the point of prosecution, people might have already taken that advice or been scammed or lost money. And so while the FCA and other regulators have provided some guidance on how to make better investment choices and how to spot potentially illegal content, the internet is a huge place. And so obviously, as one bad post comes down, another one can spring up. And I think we see this in all areas of influencing on social media. But the difference is the stakes here are so different. You know, if you buy some clothes that turn out to be terrible quality because you've been influenced by it, or some beauty products that turn out to be a bit dodgy, then your risk and your cost is not that huge. Whereas if you put your life savings into an investment that actually is way too risky for you, or at worst, a scam, there's just so much more at stake, isn't there? So great that there's more support and resources out there, but definitely got to be very careful before you follow any of this guidance.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of responsibility, of course, for us, though, because we need to take responsibility for our personal finances. And let's be honest, if someone is proposing an investment, you're putting your money into it. So you really do need to take steps to check out the investment yourself. Do your due diligence, take a look at the post or the website. Does it have those risk warnings on it? You'll often see things like capital may be at risk, or your investment can go down as well as up. And is the person giving you advice actually qualified to do it? And even if everything does look legit, it looks right, it could be, and this is awful, but it could be that fraudsters have used AI to make something look like it's legit when actually it isn't. And certainly Martin Lewis from Money Saving Expert has had an awful lot to say on this, because his image is used quite a lot in these kind of scams.
Yeah, these scammers just constantly amaze me with their new, adoption of technology to make these scams look so realistic. And initially it was, they could dupe phone numbers and so make it look like they were calling from your bank. Now, with the invention of AI and with the tools out there, they can actually make it look like a trusted figure like Martin Lewis or, other people in the industry is actually giving this advice when they're nothing to do with it. I find it quite scary, but so definitely, something to keep an eye out and see if things pass the sniff test. And I think it's also important to point out that even if someone seems knowledgeable, they are a reliable source, they do know what they're talking about, they don't know your personal circumstances, and what's right for someone might not be right for someone else. Everyone has different finances, different income, different knowledge levels or attitudes to risk. And so it's really important to take everything with a pinch of salt, because not everything is going to be right for everyone. But you can follow educators, so people who are helping to try and teach you a bit more about investing and personal finance, and people that will point you to regulated resources. So the government's Money Helper website is good for explaining certain things. And they will also always urge you to do your own homework, or if you feel like you need to, seek qualified financial advice, which obviously costs money and isn't right for everyone, but for some people it can be really great.
And I don't want to sort of pour cold water on the fact that we are seeing more and more people talking about finance on social media, because I think it is really good that we are now more open about money, and we can have conversations about money, and we can, talk to people and really get some great tips and education that maybe we've never been able to get before. And what's really good is it is breaking down some of those social taboos, because, still talking about money, most people would rather talk about sex or politics than they would about money, which is just bonkers, really. But there's also a lot of noise out there as well, because of all these conversations being had, and that can also make us a bit tone deaf.
Yeah, definitely. Some great tips in there. I think now we should move on to our special guest interview for this episode, partly because I'm so excited to hear it, and partly because I think we can all tell my voice is slightly struggling this morning. You don't need to feel too much sympathy. It's as a result of singing along to songs at Beyonce concert last night.
I have no sympathy for you. None at all.
That is fair. But I think we should save the voice and also the listeners from having to hear me croak through this and get on to the good stuff of the episode. So Linda Davies was an investment banker on Wall Street during the 1980s, which must have been fascinating. And she made at that time what she calls now her writing money. And she proceeded to do just that. So taking her experience of being a woman in finance during the time where there were not many women on Wall Street, and she wrote a series of best-selling novels. She also wrote about her own experience of being kidnapped and held in Iran for 2 weeks during the early 2000s. And now she is a money and life coach, which she's written about that too. Her book is called What Every Woman Needs to Know to Create Financial Abundance. And starting with her early career, she talks about how many life experiences and how she uses those to help people become more honest with themselves about their own finances.
So, Linda, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I want to start with your background. We've given listeners a bit of a tease there, but you have had quite a life. I mean, one of the strings to your bow is that you're a best-selling author, but your own life's been quite a story.
Well, it has, and it's not necessarily something I would have wished for, but it has had a fair share of drama. Yeah, I mean, it's just a testament to the fact that stuff happens. And, I guess you learn. You learn when stuff happens, but there is a temptation to say, okay, I've probably learned enough now. I don't really want any more drama.
You started out as an investment banker back in the United States in the 1980s. And I wanted to ask you a bit about that, because clearly for a lot of people, that was peak Michael Douglas, greed is good, Wall Street. Yeah. What was it like to be a woman in finance there and then?
It was mad, actually. And I worked for a US investment bank. And I was the first woman they employed in London in corporate finance. So I walked in there before I went to New York, and I was like a specimen. And I was an object of great curiosity. And it was, I had all my hair cut really short. I wore those ridiculous pussycat blouses. Well, I quite like them. They come back in big shoulders, big attitude. You needed that. You could not have any kind of vulnerability. You had to have this persona of toughness, which I cultivated over the years. But it was it could be glamorous. It was insanely long hours, hard work, very exciting. I got trained really well by my investment bank, Bankers Trust. So I was sent to New York and it's like a mini MBA. So which was done in 9 months of great intensity. But actually I'd had a client I'd worked on a deal before going out there, and I'd really been thrown in the deep end. And I remember having to say to this client, "Oh, I'm going to hand you over to so-and-so now because, I'm off to New York." And he said, "Oh, what, you're going to be doing deals over there?" And I said, yeah. I couldn't say, "I'm actually going to be trained." So yeah, you were thrown in the deep end.
So you were trained over there, and were you just as equally a specimen in a jar in
No, there
Wall
were
Street?
women. There were, I guess, probably about 15% of the cohort of about 30 were female. So I wasn't an oddity over there, but yeah, back in London, I definitely was.
It provided some incredibly rich fodder for your first book, Nest of Vipers. For people that don't know it, just give us a sort of taste of the story.
So it is about an international conspiracy and about a woman who is planted in the suspect investment bank to find out what's going on. She is a bit of a loose cannon herself. She has things in her background that MI6 and the governor of the Bank of England, who put her into this role, don't know about. So they don't really know what they're dealing with. And when she is set up to take a fall, she has to go rogue and break all the rules and do it her way. So it is, I like to think it's like a spy in the house of money, but a woman spy, a woman in that world. So it's seen with the female gaze.
And what prompted you to switch career? Did you just think that what you were experiencing in that world would make a good story and that you could tell it?
Well, that too, but actually it was always part of a long-term plan. So there's a great Virginia Woolf quote that everybody misquotes. And the quote actually goes, "A woman needs money and a room of her own if she is to write." And I wanted to write. I always wanted to be a writer. But, coming out of university, you got to pay the bills. You got to have a room. You got to have a roof over your head. So investment banking was the best paid way I thought I could make my running away money legally in the shortest space of time. And that's what I did. So there was always a game plan to do it for as long as I could, as long as I needed to get my running away money, and then run away. And that is what I did. But the challenge is that you get seduced by the lifestyle. Now, I didn't, because I had my game plan. And this is something I coach women on a lot. Have your game plan. Stick to it. If you want to save up your running away money, you've got to keep that in mind. Don't get seduced by blend spend. Obviously, investment banking is a very high earning, very high spending milieu. And it would have been very easy to work for 8 years and have nothing to show for it. But this was where actually being a woman helped, because I didn't have the same peer pressure. I didn't have to have a Porsche. I could rattle around in my own old car. That was just fine. I was a woman. I was eccentric. I didn't have to follow the rules. So you can actually make that work for you. And that's what I did. So I worked and I saved. And one day on my trading desk, because I did corporate finance originally, but I wanted to see what life was like on the trading floor. And I got a big idea. And I went home and I started writing it. And I wrote for 6 months. And then I had my bonus meeting with my boss. And I'd intended to work for another year. And he said, so what are your goals for the next year? And I found myself saying, to leave. And I looked shocked. He looked shocked. And leave I did. And thank goodness, I wrote for another 18 months before I confronted reality. And thank goodness Nest of Vipers worked. And it did launch a new career that I'm much better suited to than investment banking. It was like a dream scenario. And it justified the risk that I'd taken. And, the irony is that my whole career was about pricing risk. That's what I did. And I've always cultivated a relationship where I've taken risks. And for the most part, not inevitably, but for the most part, it's paid off. So I'm a big proponent of, if you can, sensible risk taking.
Because I know that certainly there was a period of your life when the risk taking had huge consequences. And, one of the books that you've written talks about a period of your own life. And most people will find the fact that you were held hostage. I mean, what was that like?
Again, almost like it happened to somebody else. It has the quality of a dream now, or a nightmare. Very, very bizarre. And the irony is that we didn't really think we were taking much of a risk there. And I guess through ignorance, we basically we were sailing in the Persian Gulf, and we got intercepted. We got boarded, kidnapped, held by the Iranians, even though we were in international waters. So, we thought we were safe. But again, stuff happens. The Black Swan event, thank you, Nicholas Taleb. These Black Swan events happen. So you got to be prepared. How can you be prepared for something like that? Ironically, everything that I had done in my life that had set me up, my academic achievements, my professional achievements, they counted for nothing. All that mattered was the relationship I was able to cultivate with our captors, human being to human being. And that was a real lesson, actually, about internal resilience and our common humanity.
That relationship, that cultivating, but also the fortitude that you were talking about there, you have taken that, your life's experience, and you've become a life coach. How did you transition to that?
So that was another funny one. So I had started giving talks on how to create a healthy relationship with money in schools, literary festivals. And I was aware of how deeply psychological our relationship with money is. So I thought, you know what, I want to do a training to find out more about, I want to do some kind of psychological training. So I was drawn to this Jungian training, which happened to be training to become a life coach. Now, I wasn't intending to become a life coach. I was really interested in the Jungian side of it. And the Jungian psychology, and I liked the people. So I signed up, but here's where it gets really interesting. So the day before, I had to pay for this, and it was an expensive 18-month course. So it's quite a commitment. I mean, originally it was 6 months and then rolled into an extra year. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I had to then decide, and it was quite aggressive and severe. So I knew I was in for a lot of treatment. And I had to decide, did I pay and embark on this or not? And I went with my instinct, and I did sign up for it and pay and participated. I think I missed one of the many, many, many sessions when I was actually in hospital having a mastectomy. But it was one of the best things I'd ever done, because not only did it help me deal with cancer and chemotherapy and double mastectomy, it created a new career to my amazement. And it gave me the depth of knowledge about our relationship with money that I've been looking for. And so I do money coaching now, and I give talks at universities. I'm about to go to Cambridge in a few weeks and talk to finalists so that they can help create a healthy relationship with money as they go out into the world. But I have clients across the board, not just money coaching, creativity coaching, because obviously that's my other thing, writing, and general life coaching. So it was a very strange evolution, this third career at a stage in my life where, I could have been putting my feet up, but it has given me so much. I mean, you learn so much, and it's great being useful. By the time you get to this age, you have a fair bit of life experience. It's nice to be able to share it along with the specific knowledge bases that I have as well. So yeah, it's been a very strange and very wonderful gift.
You certainly had more life experience, I think, than many people. And it's fascinating looking at the names of some of your courses, because most of them talk about healthy. The word healthy is used a lot because for a lot of people, our relationship with money isn't healthy.
It's not healthy. And actually, we almost aren't aware that we have one. Money all around. We don't really think about our relationship with it. We bury our head in the sand. We come out with, I'm useless with money, which is basically a justification for not doing anything to improve your relationship with it. And I don't want people to think what I'm coaching them about is to make a lot of money. It's not about that. It's about using what you have better and potentially earning more. Absolutely. And there are many cases, and particularly for women, where we're much less likely to ask for a pay rise or a promotion than men are. So that's one way that we can immediately improve our finances, increase the money coming in. And then I also coach around how to save, how to invest. Again, women, we're good at saving. We're less good at investing in terms of our propensity to invest, as you know all about this. So the healthy aspect is really important. And our relationship with money is unconscious. And it's formed, according to research at Cambridge, between the ages of 4 and 7. So what that means is that at best, you've got a 7-year-old puppeteer running the show. And do you want that? No, I wouldn't. Well, actually, my 7-year-old self was quite savvy. I was a ferocious little saver because my father opened a bank account for me and I would get interest every month. And this was in the 70s where inflation was high, interest rates were high. And I got money for nothing every month, which I thought was the most fantastic thing ever. So, I've been a proponent of passive income for practically as long as I can walk. But thanks to my conditioning, thanks to my father doing this. So, it's about making our relationship with money conscious and then using all the tools that I share. Because if I say, this is what you should do, this is the best way of saving or investing, unless we dig out our unconscious conditioning first, those tools, you might apply them for a month, but then like New Year's resolutions, you're just going to drop them because your old conditioning will revert and kick in. So that's what I do. It's the combination of the psychology and the money tools. And together, it's a powerful mix.
Interesting, you said make the most of the money that you have. And you mentioned earlier blend, splend. And we've spoken a lot about lifestyle creep. Yeah. And it is incredibly easy just to spend to your means.
Absolutely it is. And it's one of the things that I coach students about. So when they leave university is don't fall into that trap. Start saving immediately. Do it via direct debit so that you're not waiting until the end of the month to see if there's anything left, because there won't be. And resist that temptation. And it's really hard because everyone around you is doing it. If you're in the high-paying, investment banking, law, consulting, everyone around you is doing it. But actually, if you can be the one to maybe break that pattern, you're going to do a lot of people a lot of favors. But you've got to be confident. You've got to be the one that says, hey guys, if you're going to order that wine, I'm not going to go halves with you or quarters with you or whatever. And break that pattern, because it's the fastest way to just be working to maintain your lifestyle. And that's not really what it's about. Not to me, because otherwise you're trapped in that, and you've got no financial resilience. And so many people, despite those many people being in high paid jobs, they are not financially resilient because of blend spend or lifestyle creep.
I like some of the things that I've seen on social media over the last sort of 12 months or so, particularly with the cost of living crisis that we've all experienced. There were people talking about slow budgeting, and also a lot of younger women in particular saying, no, I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to go out and spend all the money that I have on a night out with friends or a takeaway or whatever else. I'm going to stay in because I want to save to ultimately get a house or a holiday or something. Yeah. And that is quite good. I think maybe the younger generation are getting a bit more savvy.
I hope so, because also they've been exposed to a real double whammy, which is fast fashion and buy now, pay later. And those two, unholy marriage as far as I'm concerned, because buy now, pay later, according to the marketing by the relevant companies, makes us spend on average 40% more than if we didn't. So buy now, pay later is a way of making us overspend, which of course is great for the whole retailing, marketing, buy now, pay later industry, but not great for our personal finances. So this generation, with all the provocations on Instagram that, your life is going to be made perfect if only you buy this. Now, I fall for this as well. I have all these brown packages arriving of stuff that I don't need. I am aware that I do this and it's not ideal. And I try and, rein it in. So the women in particular who are doing this slow budgeting, despite these provocations, it's fantastic. And the myth that in order to have a good time, we need to go out and we need to get drunk. No, there's a million ways of having a good time. Go for a run around the park with your friends. That's not going to cost anything. And it's going to do you good and you're going to feel great and you won't have a hangover the next morning. So I'm glad to hear that that's happening. And I think the more people do that and the more people break the mold, the easier it will be for more to do it. You can have a healthy contagion there.
You obviously talk to people about creating healthy habits. I'm delighted that you have a few bad habits as well. But how do you go about creating those healthy habits?
So first of all, you create an intention list. You write down your money goals. And the mere act of writing it down makes us much more likely to honor it than if we just conceptualize it and don't do anything about it. So you could say, right, I want to be able to go on an amazing holiday in 2 years' time, or I want to be able to buy a house in a decade. And you start planning for that. And you say, what do I need to do? Okay, well, I need to, at the moment, I reckon I could save, let's say, 15% of my disposable income. Set that up, have your direct debit. And then also, if you've got a 10-year time horizon, say, right, that's perfect for investing in the stock market. So you start educating yourself and you think, once I've got my emergency money in cash, 6 months expenses, if you want to be really conservative, then let's start investing in the stock market. How do I do that? Well, you guys, start educating yourself. You go on your website, look at the resources available, find out how to start. And you can start, most people say, oh, I'm not rich enough to invest in the stock market. And then I say, cappuccino economics, if you can buy a cappuccino every day, you're rich enough to invest in the stock market. So, and start now. That's the other thing. Don't procrastinate. Do this stuff. So much money, as you will know, is sitting in bank accounts, not even earning interest, because people have decision paralysis. So I'm not just plugging my books here, but they are a useful aid. Get the books, go on your resources, take action now, stop procrastinating. But, conceptualize what you want to do. Have your goals, which is the holiday or the home or getting out of debt, so that you can then look at your big decisions and see whether they align with your goals or not. And that's the key.
Because money can do incredible things. It can, take you on your next chapter. It can take you on a holiday. It can buy you a house. It can give you the kind of life that you want. But it can also be the root of an awful lot of anger and disagreements, particularly within couples.
Absolutely. And that's why I created this course called Happily Married Money, because it's one of the major causes of divorce. And we all have a different money persona that we bring to the marriage. And the other thing is, because of the money taboo, we don't talk about money, even with our nearest and dearest. And when you get very different money personalities, you might get a spender marrying a saver. You can imagine there's going to be conflict, and the saver, the spender, the splurger, is going to come home with hidden bags, and the saver is going to start having secret accounts where they save. That's not a great dynamic for a couple. So conversations about money are so important. Breaking the money taboo. Over 52% of UK adults think talking about money is taboo, which is greater than for sex, religion, politics. So, break the money taboo, talk about it, sit down together and work out your financial goals. Find out what kind of money persona you have. I've got questionnaires and things that you can do, and you can find out what your money persona is and what your partner's is. And even if it's incompatible in theory, there's a lot you can do by talking about it and having conflict resolution, having money dates where you bring these things up. So it's not a rumbling conversation you need to have all the time, but you prioritize regular conversations about it where you can air grievances and adjust the tiller if need be before the ship crashes onto the rocks.
So it's being honest with ourselves about our relationship with money, about how we are with money. Is that the most important tip that you could give someone?
I think so, because if, for instance, we are a comfort spender, and we know that when things get rough, we can say, okay, I'm going to ring a friend, or I'm going to do some breath work, or I'm going to go and do some yoga, or cook a lovely meal. I'm not going to go online and start spending. So know yourself. Or if you have a real scarcity complex, which actually most of us do have, that makes you want to accumulate while you have the funds to do so. So understand that you're being prompted by this hardwired lizard brain telling you to accumulate. It's not rational. It's you don't need it. But if you understand where it's coming from, this survival instinct, this cave person instinct to accumulate makes sense then. Doesn't make sense now. You're much better able to deal with it. And also, if you feel that you are validated by spending money, if you're the one that's out and about and you're picking up the tab, where does that come from? Understand where that comes from, because now and then that's fantastic. But if you are perennially generous at your own expense, that's not healthy. And the dynamics of relationships are not healthy there either. So what are you trying to make up for? Do you not believe that you're lovable or worthwhile? Dig a bit deeper, and give yourself that love, so you don't need to have the validation by waving your debit card.
Linda, that's been absolutely brilliant, utterly fascinating.
Thanks, Danni.
Linda Davies there, and you can find all of her books, including Nest of Vipers and 10 Things Everyone Needs to Know About Money, at all good bookstores or online. And you can find her on LinkedIn as well. She's at Linda Davies. And considering the life she has had, I feel like she must have probably about 10 financial confessions. But did you get one out of her?
She did share a confession. And like many women who've worked in finance, it's all about not getting her own finances in order from an early age.
Before I let you go, we always ask our guests for either a financial confession or a dilemma that they have experienced. So over to you.
Oh, this is a good one. It's embarrassing. So I'm a big proponent, as you will have heard, of investing in the stock market and getting on with it. And it makes a huge difference if you start young. I did not systematically start investing in the stock market till my late 30s on the suggestion of my husband. Here I am, this great feminist. I was in the city. I was an investment banker. I was supposedly a financial sophisticate. And I didn't start investing in the stock market other than little bits, tiny bits in the odd share here and there until my late 30s. Ridiculous. I, lost 2 decades of compounding. And the reason why is I just didn't know how to. Nobody had sat me down. And even though I was a financial sophisticate, being an ex-investment banker, still wasn't financially literate. And that's why what you guys are doing is so important, because you can hold the hand of people, of me. I would have loved it if someone had held my hand at 21 and said, right, this is what you need to be doing. But I was scared of blundering and losing my money. So, in it went to the Chelsea Building Society. I mean, how pedestrian is that? Sorry, no disrespect to the Chelsea Building Society, but I could have been a bit racier. And I did have a flat, thank God. I had bought a flat, so I was getting capital appreciation through that. But so that's my confession. And I'm really embarrassed about it.
Do you know, it's one that so many women that work in finance share, because so busy dealing with the day job that just don't focus on the personal finances.
Yeah, and don't focus on it, and also aren't quite sure what to do, which is even more embarrassing. So, yeah, that's my confession.
It's that, what's the phrase? Doctors being the worst patients? Is that the tried and tested
That's exactly it, yeah. I
think that is so true for lots of people, isn't it? You're doing it every day, so then you don't want to be doing it again in the evening. But I think we can all relate to that.
That is all, though, for this week's episode. Next week, we're going to be chatting about the lifetime ISA with Funmi Olafunwa, who recently gave evidence to a parliamentary committee about the pros and cons of the product. Spoiler alert, she believes the £450,000 cap should be raised and changes made to the penalties faced for drawing out your cash if you can't use it for buying a house.
Until next time, thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to join the Money Matters community by signing up to our newsletter on our website, which is at ajbellmoneymatters.co.uk. You can follow us on social media, find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and even, Danny, TikTok. Even though I always talk about how old I am and that TikTok is for youngsters, we're on there. So come and find us.
Before you go, please remember this podcast is for educational purposes, and the views expressed don't necessarily reflect those of AJ Bell. The podcast isn't telling you if a certain investment is suitable or not. Don't forget that the value of investments can change, and you can lose money as well as make it. It's also important to remember that how you're taxed will depend on your individual circumstances, and rules can change. The way an investment performed in the past may not be the same as how it behaves in the future. If you want help, go see a qualified financial advisor.